Big D back with another throwback test. Lanzar American Crafted Performance, the 500 model. Let's take a look at the wall here. And yeah, this one Lanzar kind of stands out with all these Alphasonics and Sonys and other amps. So let's take a closer look. Bring it down to the table. Take a look at this mug. Here you go, the Lanzar Optidrive Plus 500, which we'll have to pull out the RN Electronics directory. Let's pull out the 93 one. Take a closer look to find out the specs and stuff of this amp. There we have it, 250 watts by 2, about 18 inches long. This is $1,080 back then, which equates to around $2,280 in 2023, accounting for inflation. Holy moly. Here's an ad of Lanzar back in the early 90s, showing off some of their equipment and some of their trophies. There's a flyover at the top of the amplifier. You can see it's kind of blue in color. This one does have a few chips on it. It's not perfect. Here on one end, we have a stereo mono switch, a gain control, sub-wave boost controller from 0 to 18 dB, and then we have RCA inputs for sub-bass and RCA inputs for full range. No outputs or nothing. It's kind of weird. Never really seen an amp with two different inputs. Also, it doesn't have a built-in crossover, so that sub-wave control just allows you to use the bass control if you'd like. On the opposite side, we have the speaker outs, the remote out, and also double 8-gauge outputs for power and ground, and these come directly out of the amp, as a lot of the old schools did back in the day. We don't want to have any terminals for the power jacks. No, we want to have wires hanging out, like Goofy setting up his home theater.
This is not a Mickey Mouse program!
Dimension-wise, it's around 18 inches for the length, 8.5 inches for the width, and 2.4 inches on the height. Millimeter equivalents there as well. Also on the top of the amp, the O inside of Optidrive is where you see your power LED.
Oh, you know what I'm talking about.
Firing up the amp dyno so we can do the test. If you haven't seen these before, on the left, the power output in watts. In the middle, the ohm load. On the right, the voltage of the dyno. We'll also have the remote clamp indicator so we can calculate efficiency on this Class AB amp.
This here's my favorite part.
First up, we're going to do the stereo test of this 500 watt amplifier. 4 ohms is rated 250 watts by 2. Let's try it. First up, 1 kilohertz track, certified test of 1% distortion, and yes, 280 per channel. Nice. At 14.28 volts. So did its rated power. Now uncertified up to the clipping point. Let's see what we get here. Probably going to be very close to the same. And yes, virtually identical to what we saw before. 283, 280. This amp is regulated, so it's not going to be a whole lot of difference here in power. And also you'll see the regulation as far as dynamic goes, because this amp will not exhibit a lot of dynamic power. 283 and 280 at 14.5. Efficiency-wise, again, Class AB old school, 56%. It's right about what we expect. Now let's try 2 ohms in the 2-channel mode. It's rated 500 watts by 2. Certified test first. 1 kilohertz track. Can we get the 500 by 2? Yes, we do. About 535 average per channel at 13.99 volts. Very nice. Uncertified up to the clipping point. Probably going to exude very similar to what we saw before. 538 by 2 at 13.91. Nice power for this 30-year-old amplifier. Dynamic gets a little shy of 500 actually. Again, this is the regulation circuit built into the amp. It does help when you have lower voltage input, but it doesn't help for dynamics. Efficiency about 55%, so right along the lines of what we expect. Now let's bridge the amplifier for the mono tests, and we're going to do 4 ohms. It's rated 1,000 watts bridge mono. We're going to run these at 40 hertz instead of 1 kilohertz, because most people would probably bridge these and run them with subwoofers. Certified test, we got 920. It's a little bit shy, right at 14 volts. But when we reset it here and try it uncertified up to clipping, we'll see if we can get that 1,000 watts. And yes, we get it. 1,002 watts at 13.89 volts. Reset it one more time here for the dynamic burst. Again, a 40 hertz pulse track. Check this out. It does get over 1,000, over 1,100. 1130 at 14.03 volts. Then we'll check this efficiency real quick at 40 hertz, 50% efficient, typical Class AB amplifier. Next up, we'll see the results. Pretty much just showed you all the tests here. You can pause this if you want to take a closer look at the output. It did pass everything here. Also, bridge mono, it did come a little shy at 1% distortion. Overall, amp performed well. Let's find out what's inside. USA goodness for sure. This is when Lanzar was made in America in California. We'll take off the screws off the bottom here. There's only 3. We're missing 1. And here are the guts of a 500 watt or 1000 watt Class AB amplifier from the 90s. And yeah, looks pretty good overall. You can see all the different components there. These amps have a lot of output devices, which is needed for large Class ABs. Opti 500 right there on the board. Nichicon capacitors, 35 volt, 2200 microfarad on the power supply side, and 50 volt, 1000 microfarad for the rails. I do believe this amp has been recapped. A lot of times people ask me, hey, why did you stop doing all these old school amp tests? That's what we really want to see. Now, I still do these type videos, but they don't give the interest or the views of the new products that I test. And still, like 63% of y'all are not subscribed. So if you could make sure you go to Williston Audio Labs, click on the subscribe, and make sure you choose all on the drop down. That way you get notified whenever I drop a video. And yeah, if you guys like these old school videos, just let me know by watching them, sharing them, liking them, all that fun stuff. Here's a shot of the thermals with the FLIR. You can see there's some high temperatures, over 300 degrees Fahrenheit there. That is a resistor, which is resisting staying cold. It's getting hot because that's its job. Now for the sound test and the Gately enclosure, let's try the Kicker Comp 12 Gold Series. Damn! Never failed to be amazed every time I fire this up and show off this enclosure. Now you will notice the Kicker sub is mounted a little bit sideways. That's just so we could line up the mounting holes. Let's try it out though with this amp, see how it works. Now we got to do a little DJ Magic Mike for the old school. Let's try a little boom tube, Pink Panther. Now you may notice the sub is moving quite a bit with very low power, and it's just because this song has really low bass notes and it doesn't require a whole lot of power in this box and setup. So overall, very cool. Now finally, if you stuck around, let's watch 2 ohms bridge and see how the amp performs. And for those curious, let's run 2 ohms dynamic burst. This is bridged for the amplifier, 40 hertz. Let's see what we get. All right, 1050 at 13.95. Now, just as a comparison, I'm going to try the 1 kilohertz burst. 2 ohms mono again. $13.34 at 14.32.